The Numbers Game with Gil Alexander, broadcasting only on the Vegas Stats and Information Network.
He's one of those idiots who believe in analytics.
Analytics, statistics, and more are used to win wagers, and Gil has every number you need to cash your tickets. Now, live from the VSiN studios in the South Point Hotel and Casino, it's Gil Alexander.
Hour number 2 of a Numbers Game right here at VSiN, the Vegas Stats and Information Network. Gil Alexander, where sports betting analytics live. Actionable sports betting information. It is that time of the week. It's the football free-for-all on the phone from sharpfootballanalysis.com, sharpfootballstats.com, at sharpfootball, one of the great Twitter follows. It's our friend Warren Sharp. Good morning to you, Warren.
Hey, good morning, guys. How are you?
We're doing very well. Warren, just reading here the latest updates because as I was talking about Buffalo and the Jets, that barn burner of a game this weekend. Sam Darnold, quote, likely out with the foot injury here. It's a week-to-week injury. So I just wanted to, because I was just talking about this game, strained right foot, and it's going to be Josh McCown. And what's interesting about that is the line has come down through the 7. Not that I planned on starting with this game, but I was just talking about it moments ago. So I'm just curious that McCown is the market is reading McCown as worse than Darnold here. I find that a little fascinating.
I do as well, but the only way that I can comprehend that this might be the case is if the team and the coaching staff decide that winning this game is not in our interest. Now, that would be a pretty hard thing to do because I think the coach is probably a little bit on the hot seat because he's lost before. He brings in a rookie quarterback. You know, they need to show some signs of improving. So that's the only thing that could make sense to me, almost like a Gruden type effect where they don't really care. I mean, that Oakland game the other Thursday, they literally were running at the slowest rate of any team in terms of their snap count, the slowest rate of any team in the week last season, even though they were trailing by a large margin. Like, they literally did not care to win that game one bit. And that's the only thing that makes sense here because based upon what we've seen last year, McCown is definitely a better decision maker, quicker to get the ball out of his hand, and a little bit more heady. I would consider him like a little bit more of a heady quarterback at this stage in his career, obviously on the downswing, but a savvy veteran off the bench who's had more experience in those situations. So I actually think from a perspective, if they're trying to win the game, he's probably an upgrade, to be honest with you, unless the coaching staff thinks differently. Yeah,
me too. It's very curious. Didn't plan on starting there. We usually hang out with we let Warren chill for a little when we go to Bill, but I just wanted to get that out of the way. Warren, we'll come back to Warren, obviously. Want to talk to Warren about many things. The Atlanta Falcons offense, which teams right now have a lot of division games left to play and might not seem as in bad a shape or in better shape than you might think. A whole bunch of things to talk about with Warren on the show. Let's bring him in, though. He's in studio with me, ladies and gentlemen, the iconic Bill Krackomberger. Hello, Bill.
Good morning. Very rare that I come right in and I try to pick off a number here at South Point.
What are you picking off right now? You can tell us.
It's not going to be available for the public because it's 18 here at the South Point. We get it's 16.5 offshore, 16.5, 17 in town. They had Notre Dame, Florida State, 18, which is a really good number here. Sorry. Hello.
Oh, hello. Ian Book out now for Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Shenanigans.
Yeah, believe it, it's later in the season now. So it's harder and harder to win as the season goes on. I think Falco was just talking about this a little bit. And this is a tough week. But as the season goes on, it gets tougher and tougher to win. So I'll actually bet a little bit less on college football sides than I would, let's say, 6 weeks ago.
Yeah, there's not a college football game. Maybe there is one or two, but there's not a whole bunch of college football games this week where you are picking a side and you're thinking you're clear of any danger. You're like, oh, I hate that I'm making this pick, but I'm going to make it anyway. Kind of attitude this week.
Yeah, no, it is. And I was listening to Chris, and he has a great podcast too with those two guys, Stanford Steve.
They're killing it this year.
Yeah. What a great listen, and I love when he's on your show, so it's fantastic.
Very generous of him to come on the show as often as he does. I was reading now, Bill, in addition to being a professional sports bettor, Bill writes for Gaming Today, does so weekly. We never talk about what we're going to discuss here before the show, but I was actually reading your piece from this week, and then I guess they had links to previous ones, and just something caught my eye, and we talk gambling 24/7, even when we're not on air. This is just kind of what we talk about in our daily lives separately. Anyway, it just happens that the mics are on right now. And one thing that you discussed in your article when you were having dinner at Piero's caught my attention, which is
Oh, okay.
Piero's, by the way, for those who don't know. I've been there twice in my life. One was with you. You may not remember, many years ago. The other with Roxy and Chrissy. It's a very special place in
It
Vegas.
is. It's sacred ground.
Sacred ground, where
really is.
Casino was filmed. One scene in
was
Casino
filmed.
was filmed. You could still eat in the booth.
Actually, not one. All those restaurant scenes when Sharon Stone was thrown down the stairs, that was filmed there.
Yes.
And she says, "I'm going to the FBI." And, all right, he says. Joe Pesci says. And the scene outside when he takes the prostitute actor dancer, supposedly, out to the parking lot that discussed, I get my veal flown in every day.
Yeah.
That was done there. The scenes at the bar when he's cursing to the guy, Al, did you gamble the money? That was all made there.
All at
and,
Piero's.
And then the scene with the scene you're talking about, Sharon Stone, when she tied the kid up.
Yeah.
I'm a movie freak. I'm sorry. So, and he started shaking the booth. I'll kill you right here in this place. And that booth is still there too. And every time you go there's someone there. I went the other night, and Tony Marnell, who built a lot of the city's big casinos, was sitting there. And
It's
and
like real Vegas, though, right?
Oh,
like,
it is.
Like Pia Zadora. Does she still
Pia Zadora
perform there?
still performs there.
Pia Zadora, who, like, when I was a kid, I knew her from like Jermaine Jackson videos. I'm
Right,
sorry, that's where I
right.
grew up. But she was already famous before that even. So she must be.
She was like one of Sinatra's girls. She loved Sinatra loved
Yeah,
her.
like,
I mean,
she still performs there on weekends. Anyway, none of that was.
we went off the
Yeah.
subject. I'm sorry.
No,
I
that's
just love
okay.
talking about Piero's. And
Me too.
And the people who could be there any given week. I mean, Steve Wynn was there a few weeks ago. When I was there, Steve Wynn was there. They had a little get together for Tim Poster, who used to own the Golden Nugget, friend of mine.
He seemed like he landed on his feet okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
I guess so. Yeah.
Sure, he's okay. Yeah.
Money's the bottom line. Landing on your feet with a lot of money.
That's why I say it that way. And you and I have the privilege of going upstairs and seeing all the pictures up there. It's an amazing. place. Iconic.
Love those pictures.
Oh, it's the greatest place.
That's like it's almost like a mob Hall of Fame upstairs.
Yes.
You go in there and it's like the pictures of all the who's who was back in the day. There's pictures of Spilotro in there with the owner. I mean, there's pictures of Mo Dalitz, who used to be a big mob guy in town that was really, he could only, just like Casino says, back home they'd be arresting him for this. Here they're giving him awards.
Yeah,
So what a town it was.
My only interaction was that there was a picture that he labeled Mean Joe Green. And I said, that's not Mean Joe Green.
He did. It was Franco, right?
It was Franco.
Yeah.
Franco Harris. He looks at me. He looks back at the picture. He looks back at the picture. He goes, that was the whole exchange I had with. Anyway, none of that is what I wanted to talk about,
Sorry.
Karis. What you wrote in the piece was that you were having dinner with friends of yours.
Yes.
And I found this really super relatable. It's an interesting thing. So both you and I obviously work in this industry. We're bettors, and we happen to also be in the media about it as well. And you were saying how those guys who you've known for a long period of time do not ever ask you your opinion on games.
No.
I can so relate to that. I find that fascinating because my old buddies in D.C., right, who love football just as much as I do,
Yeah.
they bet on football.
Yeah.
It never comes up in conversation. And it's not because they don't respect the opinion. It's just this weird thing where they just want to come to the conclusions on their own. It's fascinating.
It's an unbelievable egotistical thing. When you want to bet your own games, your own teams, you want your own pat on the back. Me, Bill Krackenberger, I am willing to learn from anybody. You can
You gonna make me money? Yeah.
Yeah. You can literally teach me anything, tell me why you're on this game, tell me what you're doing. And if I think you're a winning player, a winning gambler, if I think you have some insight, if I think the line's going to move your way, I'm willing to bet it. I have no problem leaving the ego at the front door. I think I said that in the article. Check your ego at the front door. And,
Yeah.
and they're buddies of mine. They're in town. They all bet sports, albeit very small. But they bet sports. But they like to bet their own thing. The one guy sitting with me, he bets the Eagles every week. Every single week, he bets the. At least I got him to bet now a different line. So listen, if you're gonna bet the Eagles this week, he bets $100 a game. You're gonna bet the Eagles. Bet him at this place, you can get half a point. So at least he's listening to me on that now. But every week he refused to. He's a South Philly guy.
Yeah.
By the way, did you ever meet anybody from like North Philly or Central Philly? Everyone I know is from South Philly. I'm
So
from South
true.
Philly. Yo, South Philly.
Or they're
Don't-
claiming South Philly.
Yeah, they're claiming South Philly. But anyway, yeah South Philly guy, 73-year-old Vietnam veteran. Love the guy. Take him to breakfast 2-3 days a week, and he every week he's betting the Eagles no matter what. Doesn't even if Warren and I are against them, He's betting the Eagles.
Well, okay, Sid, and I found this unbelievable fascinating because we've talked and I've talked with others about, everything related to sports betting over time. And I'm trying to think, what are the things that I haven't talked about? And this was one of them. And this is why I loved it. And it was just sort of a throwaway thing, not a throwaway thing in your piece, but it was kind of like at the end.
It was
and I'm
at the
just
end.
like, this is the most interesting thing to me because it's such a reflection of the casual bettor. And what I mean by that is, and my mother will even say to me, Gilly, do your friends, do Tommy and Juan and all that, do they listen to your show? I'm like, no, they don't.
Wow.
And they are content making the same, and not that I am on some mountaintop.
Sure.
But just the notion that they won't even, they're not even interested in the conversation, right? They will make the same errors betting that we will talk about on this show and throughout the network on VSiN, not just this show, not only year after year, but decade after decade. And if they had a second life, it would be life after life. It would be like us having Warren on the phone and just saying, yeah, Warren, I'd rather not talk to you about football. We're just going to go ahead and make our own picks.
Wow.
It's just a funny dynamic that certain bettors are going to do what they do. And that's all they're not interested in talking to Bill Krackomberger.
You know what? Honestly, a lot of people have a bad allergy to money. It's a terrible thing to have.
It's crazy.
I love money.
Me too.
I mean, I love spending it. I spend it. I enjoy what it gets me. I admit it. I can't control myself spending money. I mean, I go out to eat and spend thousands of dollars a month. I don't care. But I mean, I wish I had more bankroll management as far as spending money went. I just spend like a drunken sailor. But however, these people have allergies to money. They don't want any more money. They just want to be in control. That's terrible. It's a terrible allergy to have.
It's the old Quincy Jones thing at the beginning of We Are the World, all those great artists. And he said there was a sign at the door, leave your ego at the door.
I love that video. Sorry.
We Are the World.
We Are the World.
1985. Anyway, thankfully, we have Bill here. We have Warren here. We'll get into some Week 10 talk about the National Football League. Specifically, I want to get into this notion about, looks like it's the Patriots and the Chiefs in the AFC. It's the Rams and the Saints in the NFC. Nothing about that game leads one to believe that might not happen. Anyway, I sort of say, those are the teams. Let another team prove me wrong. What might be those other teams? And are we sleeping on another team? I'm going to ask Warren about one or two of those coming up right here on a numbers game, the football free-for-all, right here at VSiN.
It's a numbers game, live from the tip of the strip in Las Vegas. Get your fill of numbers even after the show is over by following the crew on Twitter, @BeatingTheBook and @VSiN Live.
You get what you pay for. For centuries, that was always the case if you wanted to experience great wine. Otherwise, it was out of reach. That is until 17 years ago when Cameron Hughes came on the scene. Cameron Hughes believes everyone should have access to a great bottle of wine at a great price. He does it by buying wine from high-end wineries from around the world, bottling it under his own label, and selling it direct to you. And by cutting out the middlemen, he can chop 60 to 70% off of what you would pay for the same wine at retail. 70%. Only now it's delivered straight to your door. We're talking award-winning and highly rated wines. With Cameron Hughes wine, it's all what's inside the bottle. Just high quality and great tasting wine at prices that everyone can afford. He calls it the Wineocracy and stands behind every bottle he sells. For a limited time, receive free shipping and a free Cameron Hughes corkscrew. Go to chwine.com/game or text the word game to 511-511. Text game to 511-511. Don't pay more for high quality wines. Join the Wineocracy. Go to chwine.com/game today. Standard text rates may apply.
If you didn't catch VSiN last week, here's some of what you missed.
This is from Playboy. I think they're both. Playboy is when Tyson got knocked out by James Buster Douglas. So Playboy
Buster
got a hold of
Douglas,
Dave last year, and they had this wonderful picture of Douglas standing over top of Tyson. So they called me up. They did a story around it, and this is one of the things that I will always keep. Now, I also want to make it clear that Playgirl contacted me to be in their next centerfold issue also.
Is that the basketball picture?
It was a yin and a yang. Yeah, that was it. That's it. That's it. That's it.
Part of the Cooper compensation complicates any trade for a car, because if you can get a first-round pick for Amari Cooper, you certainly aren't going to settle for just a first-round pick for Derek Carr. I'm thinking that if someone offers them a first and a fourth, the conditional fourth, which could elevate based on certain conditions, kind of like the Sam Bradford trade. Maybe they have to seriously consider that. Don't forget, 2016, Derek Carr.
All right, let's review them. Preston and I, 3-on-3 challenge. 1.5 game lead for Preston headed into this weekend. He had the 3-0 this past week. I'm very chalky on the left. Michigan laying 10.5 against Penn State at home. Oregon laying 10 against UCLA up in Eugene. And Alabama laying 14.5 on the road at LSU. Preston a little more creative. He's taking Baylor in the points against Oklahoma State. That's 7.5 points.
Big move for Houston. We know about what this offense really is, right? It is Deshaun Watson finding guys downfield. You lose Fuller to a torn ACL, so this was a position of need. And again, this is a move that I like. And you only swap a 4th-round pick, and then you exchange 7th-rounders. I think this is a good addition for Houston Texans, which, by the way, I had no business at the beginning of the year still being alive with this Houston Texans ticket to win the AFC South. And now they're with the Jags and their struggles. Houston Texans right back in this thing, and now they get a quality wide receiver to replace another one.
Right back in it. They're the only team over 500.
Yep.
They're 5-3. Everybody else 3-4, 3-5, 3-5.
To a numbers game with your host, Gil Alexander, broadcasting live from our VSiN studios in Las Vegas.
Back on a numbers game here at SiriusXM Channel 204. Just such a privilege to have these gentlemen on the show every Thursday for a full hour in studio with Bill Krackomberger. You can follow him on Twitter, by the way, at Bill Crackman with a K, and crackwins.com. Are you still addicted to Twitter, by the way?
Yes. I'm trying to look at it less and less, but I can't help myself. You know, I find myself, but now it's college basketball's here. I'll definitely be on Twitter less.
How's your buddy Alan Boston? Where would you say his?
I just spoke to him.
You excited about college basketball?
Yeah, the first day he gave me two games. They both won. I mean, he gave me Penn, which I may have won outright 2 days ago. Then they were getting 5, and he gave me San Fran, which was a small dog +2, and they won outright by 30. So yeah, he only gave me 2 games, and they both won. Yeah.
Odds of Alan Boston coming on this show?
Probably slim. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I you know.
Should I take that personally?
No, not at all. Especially not you. No, not at all. Not at all. Yeah. No, but I'll see what if he would come on. Listen. I probably don't know anyone in my life that knows more about each team and prepared about each team with handwritten, old-fashioned notes.
Yeah.
There's no computer program. There's no algorithm. There's no
passionate.
No model.
I love it.
He's on, and by the way, he destroyed him last year. As far as I know, Allen's only had one losing year, but like 5 years ago, he was giving me every single game, and he won 90 units, 90 more games than he lost. And he gives out a lot of that stuff free on Twitter.
Yeah.
So it's all
right.
But he has a lot of same thing now. That's why you can't give out plays on Twitter, because here's a guy that has made his living, literally bought a $2 million house from sports betting, and yet these trolls, these people hiding under anonymity, mess with him and get to him sometimes.
Yeah.
And say things about him and. You know, that's why you can't put plays on. You can't give plays out on Twitter because they're great. You know, people don't know that 56% is going to make me 6 figures a year. But yet 56% they'll probably lose somehow on their own stuff.
Here are the 2 macro statements I will say about the Twitter troll thing, the echo chamber, and you and I agree on both of this. Yeah. One, if you want to talk to me, tell me your name. If you don't want to give your name, it's a non-starter, right? That's the first thing. Second thing is this: the premise, and Alan, you may find this as well, the premise that they know everything about you, right? They've determined everything about you. They know without knowing a damn thing, right? But they think they know everything about you, and yet you're supposed to accept as gospel everything that they tell you about them.
Right.
It's a fascinating thing.
Very good.
It's a fascinating thing. It's like, oh, really? Why is this the way this works? Like, how dumb is this? It's a fascinating.
That really
dynamic.
is great,
Yeah.
great. But I do like it though. You know, you're sitting in an airport, you're going somewhere, you know, whatever you may be, or you know, it's a dull time of the day, a down time of the day, I should say. And you know, you get on Twitter, you read some stuff, and you can pick up little nuggets too. And I like reading the stories.
Oh yeah.
I like reading like when someone writes about a story and they repost it on when they tweet it out on Twitter. The David Purdom stories. I love reading the gaming
great.
stuff.
Listen,
what's
and-
going on in the industry.
And Twitter has been wonderful for my podcast, for everything. Yeah, I mean, it's a double-edged sword for sure.
Yeah, what did we do 20 years ago when there was no Twitter? I don't even know. What did we do when there was no cell phones? Like, you know, you and I are a little bit older.
You remember how when we used to, like, if you had to go somewhere that you didn't know, like, you'd have to write down the directions on a piece of paper, and you'd, like, have to follow?
You know, it's amazing, right? I wonder, my grandfather always had a map in the car.
Yeah.
He had a map, and
Yeah.
he literally never would go. He was, you know, he's old-fashioned Hungarian. He wouldn't ask nobody for any directions. So
Yeah.
manly,
As my dad.
European, and he would have everything written out. And he drove across the country so many times from Jersey all the way to California and back. And he had his own little directional map. And you know, that's gone, and I love that. I miss that. It'll never be here again.
I can see my dad proudly folding his map and putting it in the door.
And you know, that's exactly right, in the door.
Yeah,
and you know, I'm a throwback. I was just talking about this. Sinatra was on the other day, and I was like, oh man, I miss Sinatra songs in the background, and that's where you go, like a place like Piero's or the Italian American Club. And I thought about it, because who we are today, that's going to be gone in 50 years.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think anyone will even know. Like, Sinatra now will be like, Sinatra then will be like today. You're like, you ever hear this guy Caruso? You know, he was a great tenor back here. But I hope not. But who's going to listen to the Sinatra 50 years from now? Everyone's going to be dead, including me.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, so I mean. It's sad. It's sad that it won't be here forever, and the millennials I would love for them to get some knowledge and some stuff like Sinatra and the Vegas stories. We try to keep them alive. Look what we opened up with Piero's story.
Talking about Piero's.
It's great.
For God's sakes.
Great. I love this show.
Thank you. I do too.
I do. Look forward to it.
Yeah, me too, man. And I could go on about that. First day we got electronic football, this like amazing thing in our hands. We were like little sticks, digital sticks
Oh my God, yeah.
on a
Yeah,
handheld. Like that was our big joy. Anyway,
Hey, did you have a sports pager?
no.
I had a sports pager.
Wait, yes, I did for baseball scores.
Yeah, for
that
baseball.
little white
For the
one.
score, the little,
Yeah.
I had a sports
That's
pager.
right, I
like
did.
people will be saying sports pager. Yes, you used
right.
you used to get sports pagers back then. You used to have every score.
I had forgotten all about that.
Or you know, we used to do in New York. We used to do the 9-7. By the way, you used to have a roll of dimes with you to go to the payphones.
Oh,
You kept the roll of dimes, especially if you're a phone guy. I love phones. My friend loved phone. You kept the roll of dimes. And what did you used to call? 976-1313. It was a sports phone.
976. That was the
1313,
prefix.
right?
Yeah.
For scores.
Yep.
They used to have dial-a-joke. Remember that?
Yeah.
What a dial-a-joke for the day.
I thought of it.
How sick were we?
But remember, they thought that was such a great business idea. Oh, you can call for a joke.
Call for a joke. Jackie the Joke Ben Martland was one of the guys.
Yeah.
Dial-a-joke. Anyway, yeah, we're going to the
Anyway.
going off on different tangents.
Warren, who's a bit younger than us, probably would
Yeah,
be
I
like,
know.
can we talk about football? Warren, I do want to ask you about.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Hey guys, there was a trick amongst my group back in high school where they had the weather. You would call the weather line. Well, if you were looking to have a female give you a call at your house later at night and you didn't want to wake your parents up, you would just call the weather line, be listening to weather, and wait for the call to beep in. That way your house phone wouldn't ring.
Right.
Wow.
That's exactly right.
That's great.
Oh, I forgot all about those tactics.
You're not old enough for that. Plus, in high school, you were like 9 years old in high school. Are you kidding?
Yeah, Warren.
You know, wow. That's good.
9 years old in high school. Warren, give me the high school. Give me the story on the Falcons here for a second, because one of the teams, obviously, the Falcons now are 4-4. They housed the Redskins, the poor Redskins, who are decimated now on their offensive line for a second straight year. But the Falcons come in, they beat them. They're 4-4 now. And again, Patriots, Chiefs, AFC, Saints, Rams, NFC. Tonight's a good game of contenders between the Steelers and the Panthers when you talk about what are the teams that can poke holes in those two championship games. The Falcons, if I were to ask, okay, then what are the teams under the radar that nobody's thinking about? I'm not holding anybody to the Falcons, but I think they're interesting, and we tend to think of Steve Sarkisian in a certain way, the opposite way that we think of a guy like Kyle Shanahan, who he replaced as the OC in Atlanta. We think very highly of Kyle, and not so highly, let's put it that way, of Steve Sarkisian. But you have some interesting stats about his work in Atlanta.
Well, I'm all for giving people second chances, keeping an open mind, because it is very important when you're looking at football to always constantly be evaluating and reevaluating things. You can't just get this stuck notion in your head and then never diverge from it. You always have to keep testing. And one of the things that we were down on Steve Sarkisian last year was, look, hey, man, this offense looks terrible compared to what Kyle Shanahan brought in. And then he started out the season this year terrible in the red zone. If you remember, he was running all these jumbo formations down at the goal line week 1 in Philadelphia. They were getting stuffed. They couldn't get past beating the Philadelphia Eagles with Nick Foles, even though Foles was terrible in that game. And so it's like, oh, man, another full season of this terrible play calling from Steve Sarkisian, particularly in the red zone. But you know what he's done? He's reevaluated his red zone offense, and I highly commend them for doing this. Last season, they did this as well. After they lost to the New England Patriots, I believe it was like week 6 or 7, they then reevaluated their overall offense, fixed a few things, and got much more aggressive targeting Julio Jones down the field and had a much better season the second half of the year last year and got into the postseason because it was very much on the verge of doing that to start the year. This year, they've made some definite changes in the red zone. They now have become, since week 3, the number 1 most successful passing offense. By that I mean they have called the highest rate of successful pass plays in the red zone since week 3. They've also become, since week 4, the number 1 most successful run offense. Again, they've called the highest rate of successful run plays in the red zone. So you combine those two things together, this is one of the most successful red zone offenses at calling plays that keep the offense on schedule and ultimately will convert down inside of the red zone. They have the number 1 third down offense so far this year as well, in the year in totality. And so this offense is definitely trending in the right direction. They went into their bye off of 2 back-to-back wins after being, I think, 1-4. They went on they beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They beat the New York Giants. They went into their bye. They came out of their bye, beat the Washington Redskins. Now they've got the Cleveland Browns. This team definitely looks like they are turning things around. The problem for them, though, of course, is the NFC South is brutal. The Carolina Panthers are much better than we all expected heading into the year, and they still got the Saints, who are looking like they could be the de facto team to, battle the Rams in the NFC Championship game. So that division is brutal. They've got a tough task ahead of them to make it to the playoffs as a wild card seed, but this is a team that's going to be there every step of the way, I think.
Every step of the way, it looks like. As you say, tough division, but Atlanta obviously trending well and should get some guys back on defense along the way. You also mentioned something which caught my eye, which is about, we're sort of halfway through the season here. Some teams exactly half, some teams a game past the halfway point of the season. And you noted the divisional games left to play for many teams, some of them on the cusp of the playoffs or in current very solid playoff position. Talk to me, if you will, talk to everybody, if you would, about the teams that are sitting pretty. In other words, not sitting pretty in the sense that even though they might be behind the 8 ball right now, they have enough division games left that they can get out of this position in a way that other teams couldn't without these head-to-heads.
Right, exactly. And it is very important to be able to, the number one thing that all teams should set, you set goals entering the season. And the number one thing that every team, because there's only 4 teams in the division, 3 other than them, is to win their division. That's first and foremost. If you win your division, you're assured to go to the playoffs. You have to beat the teams in your division. Some teams build their roster just to make sure that they've got the matchups to win those divisional games. And if you look at some teams that have a losing record or are not doing so well this year, you can look at a team like the Philadelphia Eagles and the Indianapolis Colts. Both of those teams, there's only 4 teams in the league that have only played 1 divisional game. And the Philadelphia Eagles is one of those teams, and the Indianapolis Colts is one of those teams. Philadelphia has played just the Giants so far in their division. It seems crazy that out of their first 8 games, they had a bye week 9. They're coming back against the Cowboys, that they would only play out of those first 8 games 1 game in their division. The season is completely backloaded. They play the Cowboys 4 weeks apart. They play the Giants in week 12. They play 2 games against the Redskins, week 13 and week 17. This NFC East is very much up for grabs. The Redskins, obviously are sitting in the catbird seat right now, but their offensive line has just been decimated by injuries recently, and there's still a lot of questions about Alex Smith there. So their ceiling probably not as high as their record right now, and the Eagles definitely are gunning for them after making the trade for Golden Tate. The Indianapolis Colts are another team. They've got a very tough task this week. They've got to get things started this week. And, of course, the Jacksonville Jaguars are thinking the same exact thing, coming off their bye after getting that loss over in London to the Eagles. Like, there is a lot of games left to be played in the AFC South, and this is a division that no team is running away with. And interestingly, Indianapolis Colts, they could be in a great position to come back and steal this division. They've got 2 games against the Jacksonville Jaguars, Week 10 and Week 13. So there's only 2 weeks in between both of those meetings. This is the game at home. Jacksonville, if they come in there and Jacksonville beats the Colts, I think the Colts is probably looking very, very badly for them. But if the Colts are able to win this game in Jacksonville, I think their season completely turns around because that's the first of 3 straight home games. They also play the Titans at home next week. And then they get the Dolphins at home before going down to Jacksonville. They've got a game against Houston left, and they'll have one more game Week 17 to close out the season in Tennessee. So they've got an ample opportunity to do well, but they've got to take down these next 2 games at home. So looking at the schedule, and then on the reverse of that, a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers, they are the only team, we're talking about teams that only played 1 divisional game. Pittsburgh's the only team that's actually played 5 of their divisional games already. It's, a couple of years ago, Gil, you probably remember the league talked about we're going to make this season more competitive and more interesting by backloading divisional games later in the schedule so that we're not just playing all these random games, that we're actually deciding the division with these great games late. Well, they didn't do that with the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers through Week 9 after just defeating the Browns last week and the Ravens, Browns 2 weeks ago and the Ravens last week, they're done with their division games until Week 17. Now, that doesn't mean they've got an easy schedule. They still have to play Carolina tonight. They have to go on the road to Jacksonville, who's sort of been a little bit of a thorn in their side. That's their game next week. And then they still have the Patriots and the Saints and the LA Chargers. So 3 very difficult games late in the season, Week 13, Week 15, and Week 16. But in terms of their division, they're sitting pretty right now at 3-1-1 with just 1 home game against the Bengals left.
It's so interesting, particularly I think with that Colts-Jaguars angle that we were just talking about, because it really does, for the better, depending on how you handicap this individual game between the Colts and the Jaguars. And again, the Colts right now are 2.5-point favorites at home this Sunday against the Jaguars. Both teams at the bottom, if you will, of the AFC South at 3-5, but no one is just cowering at the Houston Texans on top of that division right now at 6-3. But what Warren's saying is so many division games left that it's that much more of a direct route to get to the top. So if you believe the Colts, say, are going to win this football game, maybe a flyer on the Colts in the AFC South if you don't have one already. Maybe you feel that much better about the one that you already have in your pocket, and they're 7-1, 8-1 still to win this division. So there's still some value, and it's informed by your game handicap. And I think that's an interesting exercise to go through. Who's got the schedule that gives them the best opportunity to make up the most ground the quickest, if you will. About Pittsburgh, let's wrap up this segment with that. Pittsburgh, right now, it's 3.5 reduced juice. It's 3 in some places now, Warren. Pittsburgh hosting the Panthers tonight. And I said this at the beginning of the show today. Thursday night games are funny because we complain that so many of them are horrible matchups. And then when we get a good matchup, we often end up complaining afterwards, oh, I wish these 2 teams had actually played on a Sunday since it was so sloppy. So it's like we get upset at both things. Do you have any play on this game today, either spread or total?
I do. The question is, how long do I have to go here? Because
we discussed talking about this. We could talk
to.
about this game for an hour, but maybe next break.
Go as you want to take a break and get into it. Let's do that. Why don't we do that? I appreciate that. We'll say some things. We'll get the abridged version.
Yes,
Steelers and Panthers coming up, and we'll do some other games here on a numbers game right here at VSiN.
It's a numbers game, live from the tip of the strip in Las Vegas. Get your fill of numbers even after the show is over by following the crew on Twitter, @BeatingTheBook and @VSiN Live.
If you didn't catch VSiN last week, here's some of what you missed.
Your top 5 in college better than perceived: Oklahoma, Ole Miss, Interesting. Maryland, Purdue, and Louisiana Lafayette.
One of the teams that stood out for me there, though, is here's Ole Miss. Ole Miss is a very potent offense, and on my effective scale, they're actually averaging 44.3 points per game. Their last 4 games, I believe they're 5-3 now, and their last 4 games are teams you could consider either a toss-up or games they should win. I think this is a team that could go on a run in November.
What do you guys do there to make sure that that's really what he wants? Like the Purdue buying the hook makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah, I mean, I happened to be walking through the back room right when he came up to the counter. I was talking to the guys, and I saw the bet, and I just said to myself, you know what, I'm going to go out there, I'll say hi to him and just make sure that's what he wants to do, just to cover every base. And he told me that's what he wanted to do. I probably would have done something similar if he tried to buy the half point on a pick'em game. I mean, I would just take 30 seconds to just walk out there and verify that's what the guy wants. The last thing you want is a guy making a huge bet coming back to you later saying this is not what I wanted.
So you're on a bit of a roll here calling these. What are you looking at on the schedule this week from an ATS perspective?
Houston's one of the hottest teams in the National Football League. Very explosive offense with a few extra days to prepare for this trip to Denver. Denver just traded away one of their more productive players. I don't see any reason why Houston shouldn't be favored in a game against Denver. I don't care where it's being played. I like the Texans.
I think we need to take a moment of silence. Thank you. You guys had 2 losing weekends in a row. Feel bad for you.
The books did? We actually did okay, John, because we posted the baseball futures on Sunday.
Okay.
So we won a lot on the Red Sox, so like in the bottom line, it looks okay. But the NFL didn't go well. You know, the Patriots covered last night.
Yes, they did.
I don't know if you caught that. That was not good for the books.
16 unanswered.
A ball was caught yesterday, that's for sure.
16 unanswered points in the final 17 minutes. The Bills were covering for 54 minutes.
That was a tough one, man.
Back to a numbers game with your host, Gil Alexander, broadcasting live from our VSiN studios in Las Vegas.
Back on a numbers game, Sirius XM Channel 204. It's Gil Alexander. Warren Sharp is here from sharpfootballanalysis.com, sharpfootballstats.com, at sharpfootball on Twitter. Bill Krackomberger, crackwins.com, at Bill Crackman with a K on Twitter, where he has his ruminations and thoughts. Before we get to Pittsburgh, Carolina, you wanted to say something, sir.
Oh, no, I was asking you guys about the VSiN all-access package and stuff that you guys had. I was asking you guys on break because if there's college basketball in there too, that's just another reason why people should obtain it. But $99 for 3 months. I said, if you can, if you could find one little nugget of information,
then it's worth it.
That can make it worth $33 a month for you, which definitely you could. It's just so worth it. I mean, where else can you, for $33 a month, it's the cost of a lunch. A good lunch. But, yeah, I mean, it's just a great thing to have, a great tool. I just wanted to tell people from a betting standpoint, I mean, it's a great thing to have. So.
Yeah, and again, we have to tell people this because some people are going to inevitably listen and be like, oh, was that the time to give the promo? You completely on your own.
No, I asked you.
Yeah.
I asked you guys if college basketball was included, and I said, hey, this is a great thing to have for the public, and I mentioned it. It's people are always looking for answers.
That's right.
They're looking for sports betting questions, sports betting answers. For $33 a month, you can have it right there.
I think this is where I say vsin.com/subscribe.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
That's probably where I say that. And you said you found the book on earth with the worst juice ever.
I was down in the Dominican Republic on the weekend, did a quick jaunt down there for a couple tournaments, which actually worked out good financially.
Punta Cana?
Yeah, Punta Cana. And the Hard Rock Punta Cana had minus 115. I posted it on Twitter. It had minus 115 on both sides of all the games. That's nice, laying 115 on an NFL game that you can't even beat to begin with. I shouldn't say you can't even beat, but I mean it's hard to beat to begin with, the hardest, and they're charging 115 on both sides. And someone just texted me. He's right. The 6 biggest NFL favorites all covered last week.
They did.
So that means to me, maybe at game time, if you have a lot of the apps here in town in Vegas, besides, don't put the count on. We don't want to go there. But you might be able to grab half a point on some of these dogs, or a full point compared to the offshore world. So it's good to keep an eye on that.
Yeah, it's why, like in Super Contests, in the Super Contest Classic in Gold last week, if you went 5-0, you picked up a game. That's it.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's how many squares are in the pool.
Yeah,
am I thinking right? I don't mean to call them squares, but
let's just put it this way. It wasn't that hard to come up with winners last week.
So this is why the books lost all the money.
That's correct.
I'm going to have to get my collection bucket out again. I have a collection bucket.
I know. I've seen your pictures of that.
Yeah, I got like 12,000 hits, 15,000 hits. I may have to put it out this week. I forgot about that. Sorry, guys. I'll have that money by the end of the week.
Jay Root over at MGM said it was one of his 10 worst Sundays ever.
Wow.
Yeah. So
wow.
Others, varies from shop to shop how badly it went. Pittsburgh, Carolina tonight. Pittsburgh 3.5-point favorites, reduced juice. There's even some threes out there now in this game, which was at 5. Between the 6-2 Panthers and the 5-2-1 Steelers at Pittsburgh tonight. Both teams 5-3 against the number. Total 51.5. Warren, have at it, sir.
Well, this game is like you mentioned, is very compelling. It's much more compelling than a lot of the Thursday night matchups that we're accustomed to. And I think one of the interesting angles here is how unique a team the Carolina Panthers are right now. So the Pittsburgh Steelers have faced the 5th easiest schedule of rushing offenses so far this year. They've played one offense that even ranks in the top 15 at running the football since playing the Kansas City Chiefs back in Week 4. So they have not faced very many good running offenses. The Carolina Panthers are a team that wants to run the ball and does it very well. But the interesting thing about it, diving into this more, using some of the stats from Sharp Football Stats, is that the Carolina Panthers use a very creative run offense. While they use a little bit of inside zone and some power runs, which is what a lot of teams use in addition to outside zone and lead runs, those make up a very small portfolio of what Carolina does. A lot of their rushing comes from option pitches, triple options, jet sweeps, quarterback-designed runs, and quarterback scrambles if there's coverage down the field. They are very good with those types of runs. Those types of runs, all those combined, 65% success rate and the average 6.7 yards per carry. The Pittsburgh Steelers has a very good run defense, but they have primarily faced just the standard runs, inside, outside zone, and power. They have only faced a total of 13 runs, which are option pitches, triple options, jet sweeps, and those quarterback runs I mentioned earlier. And those runs average an 85% success rate and 8.7 yards per carry against the Steelers. So those runs used very infrequently against the Steelers and around the league, but Carolina specializes in them. They've got the receivers who run a lot of these types of runs, moving behind Cam Newton. We've seen the Steelers struggle tremendously with pre-snap motion. Just last week, they left Lamar Jackson completely wide open in the end zone, and Joe Flacco, being a Joe Flacco, completely doesn't even look in that direction and throws the ball to a covered receiver, and it goes out of bounds. But we also saw in the past, Rob Gronkowski would line up at the end of the line of scrimmage, and the Steelers don't even send a player over there to cover him, and he's freaking Rob Gronkowski. So the Steelers have mental lapses. They're very undisciplined, blow coverage pretty often on defense, and now they're facing, after just playing the Baltimore Ravens, a division rival who stole the game the week before, they had to go into Baltimore, planned a lot, focused a lot on beating the Ravens to avoid that division sweep. Now on a short week, to a team that they rarely are accustomed to dealing with these types of runs, have to face a team like the Carolina Panthers. I think that is a big edge for Carolina in this game, to be able to do what they do well and run the ball and have success with all these motions. And trust me, the Carolina Panthers know all of this. Now, on the other side of the ball, the Pittsburgh Steelers, I think their offense is in a pretty good place as well, because this Carolina Panthers defense, it's the 3rd easiest pass defense that the Pittsburgh Steelers will have faced this year. It'll be the easiest defense the Steelers have faced since hanging 41 points on the Falcons in Week 5. And they are very bad at rushing the quarterback. And typically that combination of being a bad pass defense and struggling to rush the quarterback means one thing, and that should speak to explosive passing. And this Carolina Panthers pass defense ranks 27th in explosive pass defense. The Steelers haven't faced a team this bad except for one other time this season, and that was on the road down in Tampa Bay against the Buccaneers. Remember that McDonald, the tight end, just shoved the guy down, actually ended that guy's season. He tore something in his knee and was out for the year on like a 80-yard touchdown scamper. Yeah. There's a lot of big plays in that game. And since then, the Steelers have played teams that are very good against defending explosive passes, like 2 games against the Ravens and the Cincinnati Bengals and the Cleveland Browns and the Atlanta Falcons. Now they get to face this team on a short week who struggles tremendously against explosive passes. And then the last bit of this discussion, I think, should focus on the red zone, because I think both teams are going to be capable of getting into the red zone, and both defenses are poor against the red zone. Both offenses great. The Steelers ranked number 2 in the year. They convert 75% of the time they've been in the red zone, 83% of the time when they're playing in Pittsburgh. The Panthers are actually a top 5 red zone offense, struggled a little bit in the past, but this season, they're top 5 under North Turner. They're converting at a tremendous rate, 92% the last 3 games they've played. Do they go and score touchdowns when they're inside the red zone? The Steelers allowed 4 trips in the red zone last week by the Baltimore Ravens, nowhere near as good of an offense. Baltimore only converted 1 of those. I think Carolina's going to score here. Carolina is also the second worst red zone defense at allowing 80% of trips into the red zone to score touchdowns. So all this stuff combined, I could see why the line has dropped a little bit in favor of the Carolina Panthers, but I also see why this line open at 50 has been bet up as high as 52. I even saw 52.5 at Chris before taking a little bit of under money. The weather is supposed to be perfect in Pittsburgh, like low 40s to upper 30s, absolutely no wind, no precipitation. It's going to be a great evening for football in Pittsburgh. I think there's going to be a chance for some points on the scoreboard.
That is a strong over dissertation from Warren Sharp.
Warren, before everyone goes to bet their bankrolls here, people are knocking on the windows here at the VSiN studios. Did he say the over?
That's right.
We bet over 50 on the game. I know it doesn't make a big difference. You say, 50, 51, but 51's a real number. So, these games land these numbers, 27, 24. And that actually is what the projected spread would be if it's 3 and 51. So we bet over 50. So let's get that out there to the public, too. Probably okay to go over 51.
Right, and the other...
It's 50.5 here. I see at Mirage.
Yeah,
so.
I agree.
Go ahead.
I agree. And 100%, 51 is a very valuable number. Great point. And the other thing is, while I sound excited talking about this game because there's a lot of interesting matchups to discuss here, it's not a game that had like tremendous, ridiculous value. It was a game that we wanted to get on early because I thought the line would go higher, and it is a game that I think ends with more than 50 points on the board. But it's not as if the odds maker was completely wrong and this total should have been set at like 57, so this is like a super strong wager. It is not. It's just there was some value here. I like the matchups. I like the red zone angle. And more importantly, I think the lack of familiarity between these two teams and the way that Carolina runs the ball should have some edges. But I'm interested to see if what I think pregame heading into it is what actually plays out. But I can say that, I do talk to certain people around the league, and Crack knows this, but I'm not going to go into any more detail, just to say that these teams are aware of some of the opponent's weaknesses here. So I'm excited to see how this game plays out.
As I was saying, a moderately strong conviction for Warren.
No, it was. It sounded like this is bankroll.
Well, for Warren, that was very.
Listen, we bet it. Yeah. I mean, I bet it. I bet a lot of money on it, but I bet it over 50. And listen, I'll have just as much on a college basketball game tonight as it will on this total. So if that means anything.
That's good perspective right there. Just because it's a standalone NFL game doesn't mean you have to back up the truck.
As a matter of fact, to be honest with you, I'll have 3 times more on a college basketball game on Saturday than I will on tonight's NFL game, even though it is, Warren's.
How much in-game do you do? Did you do any in-game?
No, not really. There's too much of a delay.
Warren,
I'm very cynical.
Warren, do you do any in-game?
Warren doesn't bet.
No, I tend to agree with Crack. I'm not allowed to bet this year, so I can't do anything.
But even previous years, though, Warren. I mean, I've known you a decade. You're not a bettor. I mean, and I don't want you to bet. By the way, should we be talking about this on air? No. I don't want you to even bet though, because I don't want that element coming into play. I don't want that with any originator. I don't want you. I don't want. Let me handle anything. I don't want you to do anything.
Warren, well, let's
exactly. Me personally, I don't, and that's why it's a great relationship to work with a guy like Crack, because that's his specialty. So I don't need to be the one. It would be a complete waste of time. Although I see numbers on the screen that I tell Crack, because I'm sitting here looking at the screen all day, hey, they got a great number here. We should do something. But I'm not the one actually going out there and trying to get down on these games. That's Crack's specialty.
Yeah. Warren not allowed to bet. Let's leave it at that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We're coming back. Final two questions of the show that we always do. The first of which is, which of the big favorites is the most likely, in their opinion, to lose outright? I forced them to answer this question. It should be noted that over half the schedule qualifies this week. Over half the games have a spread of a touchdown or more this weekend in the NFL. And then the game, if we lived in a bizarro world and they were forced to bet a side in each and every game on the slate, but they were allowed one pass, what game would that be? It's on the way on a numbers game right here at VSiN with Warren and Bill.
It's a numbers game, live from the tip of the strip in Las Vegas. Get your fill of numbers even after the show is over by following the crew on Twitter, @BeatingTheBook and @VSiN Live.
If you didn't catch VSiN last week, here's some of what you missed.
This is from Playboy. I think they're both. Playboy is when Tyson got knocked out by James Buster Douglas. So Playboy
Buster
got a hold of
Douglas,
me
yeah.
last year, and they had this wonderful picture of Douglas standing over top of Tyson. So they called me up. They did a story around it, and this is one of the things that I will always keep. Now, I also want to make it clear that Playgirl contacted me to be in their next centerfold issue also.
Is that the basketball picture?
It was a yin and a yang. Yeah, that was it. That's it. That's it. That's it.
Part of the Cooper compensation complicates any trade for Carr, because if you can get a first-round pick for Amari Cooper, you certainly aren't going to settle for just a first-round pick for Derek Carr. I'm thinking that if someone offers them a first and a fourth, the conditional fourth, which could elevate based on certain conditions, kind of like the Sam Bradford trade, maybe they have to seriously consider that. Don't forget, 2016, Derek Carr.
All right, let's review them. Preston and I, 3-on-3 challenge. 1.5 game lead for Preston headed into this weekend. He had the 3-0 this past week. I'm very chalky on the left. Michigan laying 10.5 against Penn State at home. Oregon laying 10 against UCLA up in Eugene. And Alabama laying 14.5 on the road at LSU. Preston a little more creative. He's taking Baylor in the points against Oklahoma State. That's 7.5 points.
Big move for Houston. We know about what this offense really is, right? It is Deshaun Watson finding guys downfield. You lose Fuller to a torn ACL, so this was a position of need. And again, this is a move that I like. And you only swap a 4th-round pick, and then you exchange 7th-rounders. I think this is a good addition for Houston Texans, which, by the way, I had no business at the beginning of the year still being alive at this Houston Texans ticket to win the AFC South. And now they're with the Jags and their struggles. Houston Texans right back in this thing, and now they get a quality wide receiver to replace another one.
Right back in it. They're the only team over 500.
Yep.
They're 5-3. Everybody else 3-4, 3-5, 3-5.
To a numbers game with your host, Gil Alexander, broadcasting live from our VSiN studios in Las Vegas.
Back on a numbers game here at VSiN, it's Gil Alexander. Bill, we and I were talking off air about something. I think this is very important. Go ahead, say what you want to say.
I grew up in a very tough Italian, Irish, Catholic town, little 1 mile square foot town, Kingsburg, New Jersey, boardwalk shore town. I worked at my aunt and uncle's pizza stand, cutting pies since I'm 9 years old. I grew up on that town. If it wasn't for that town, I wouldn't be who I was today. It shaped me to be who I am today. That boardwalk, dealing with people at such a young age. And I had one friend on that boardwalk who I kept in touch with till this day. And my friend Glenn Von Bargen, and he passed away last weekend, and 52 years old. And he was a little bit older than me. And we were on the same football team, though I'm 2 years younger than him. And he's a guy that he would call me all the time. And whenever the Rolling Stones were in Vegas, I said, Glenn, come on, I'm sending you out to Vegas with me. And I'd fly him out here, and we got first row tickets to the Rolling Stones. He had guitar picks from Keith Richards, Ronnie Wood. I mean, we had great times together, and had him in 3 different shows. It was great, and so it bothered me. He's the only friend I had, childhood friend that I kept in touch with since I'm 9 years old, and I just wanted to maybe dedicate the show to him because he deserves it. And tough kid too, very tough kid, very loyal. I grew up in a very loyal town, so if you're there, if you're from Kingsburg, there was a bond of loyalty there. Glenn would take a bullet for me. I mean, he was that loyal, and I just wanted to say that. That's all. Thanks for giving me that.
My condolences to you, man.
Thank you.
And I'll repeat what I said off air, which is when my oldest friends in D.C., still my best friends, and when my best friend's dad, when his best friend died, my best friend's dad's best friend, he cried for days. And I'll never forget what he said to me and my buddy Tommy. He said, you have a bond with your parent, you have a bond with your children, you have a bond with your spouse. But there's nothing like the bond you have with your childhood friend, because that's the relationship that is truly 100% authentic.
I could trust him with anything.
Yes.
With anything. They put a gun to his head, he wouldn't give it up.
I'll never forget that. I think it's so true. So my
Thank
condolences.
Thank you.
No real way to segue to this, but we'll close with the final 2 questions. The first of which is always, which of the big favorites do you gentlemen believe is the most likely to lose outright? And we have 8 games here that are 7 points or higher. Tennessee... let's start with the favorite. New England, 6.5 or 7 point favorites on the road at Tennessee. Kansas City, 16.5 consensus favorite at home against Arizona. Chicago, touchdown favorites at home against Detroit. Chargers, 10-point favorites on the road against Oakland. Rams, 10-point favorites at home against Seattle. Keeps going. Green Bay, 10-point favorites at home against Miami. And finally, Sunday night, Philadelphia now up to a 7-point favorite at home against Dallas. 8 different games. Which of those big favorites, you got to pick one, is the most likely, in your opinion, to lose outright? Warren, we got about 20 seconds for each of these.
I'll go with the Rams.
Rams.
Seahawks over the Rams.
Oh, okay. Rams. He's forced to answer. He's not saying he's doing it. He's just forced to answer. You, Bill, same question?
Cincinnati Bengals. And, if I can get – I see a 6-dog 15. If I can get a 6, I may be
I'm sorry, that wasn't one of the candidates.
Oh, it wasn't?
No.
There's a 6 there. Okay. Sorry about that. I see 6-dog 15.
You can't go rogue, Bill.
Sorry. All right, Tennessee.
All right.
Tennessee over anyone.
Tennessee over there. All right, Tennessee at home. And then the final question, Bizarro World. You are forced to pick a side in each and every one of these games, but you're allowed one pass where you're like, this game's ridiculous. There's no way I'm touching it. Warren, which game would that be?
Probably Chicago-Detroit for me.
Chicago-Detroit. Chicago, touchdown favorite. Of all the games on the slate, not just the ones I've mentioned, that's the one. Chicago, touchdown favorites against Detroit. Which is your pass?
Buffalo Jets. Something stinks there.
Something does stink. Josh McCown is your quarterback, and the line went down.
Yeah, something's weird.
That is a weird game. Total, by the way, 34. My goodness, in this NFL. Warren Sharp, sharpfootballanalysis.com, sharpfootballstats.com, at sharpfootball. Thank you, sir. Bill Krackenberger, at Bill Crackman with the K on Twitter. Crackwins.com. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Mitchell Baltley next at VSiN.
It's a numbers game, live from the tip of the strip in Las Vegas. Get your fill of numbers even after the show is over by following the crew on Twitter, at Beating the Book and at VSiN Live.
If you didn't catch VSiN last week, here's some of what you missed.
Your top 5 in college better than perceived: Oklahoma, Ole Miss, interesting, Maryland, Purdue, and Louisiana Lafayette.
One of the teams that stood out for me there